Hey, it's me again, the Creep Critic. I know I missed last week, but that's okay. I'm not gonna make this intro too long. I know I look and feel worse every time I make a video, so let's just do this. On February 9th, 2004, a 21-year-old nursing student from the University of Massachusetts Amherst completely vanished in a mysterious car accident, leaving many questions and an indeterminate mystery spanning over 2 decades. But before we get into the meat and potatoes of this juicy case, let's go over some background. I believe that it is always important to learn about both the victims and assailants before getting into why they ended up where they did. Maura Murray was born in Hanson, Massachusetts on May 4th, 1982, being the fourth child in a family of 5. Hanson was a small town with not much entertainment for kids, so it's safe to assume they spent a lot of time lost in imagination. For reasons that were never publicly disclosed, Maura's parents divorced when she was 6, and she primarily lived with her mother. In high school, she could be described as a bright, athletic, and driven young woman. Running seemed to be an integral part of her life, and she was a star track athlete. She and her older sister Julie really bonded over the sport. Even her father, Fred Murray, was a runner, having accomplished 9 marathons himself. And running was pretty much in her blood. She had a very strong academic and athletic career, accomplishing more in high school than I have in my entire life up to this point. After graduating from high school, Maura attended the United States Military Academy at West Point, New York. She was following the footsteps of her older sister Julie, whom she respected greatly and had a strong emotional connection with. Julie was in love with the cadet lifestyle, and Maura wanted to give the structured life a shot. She studied chemical engineering for 3 years before realizing that she wasn't cut from the same cloth as her sister. The program was physically and mentally draining, and she was having a terrible time. Her grades and behavior reflected these struggles. Maura was caught stealing makeup at a store where security confronted her about it. She got caught. Me personally, I wouldn't. While going through her honor hearing proceedings, she met Bill Roush, and the two were captivated by each other, quickly falling in love and starting what could only be described as a rocky relationship. Maura was at a crossroads in her life and most likely struggled with direction. She was coming up on her 3rd year in USMA, often called the Crow Year. Before entering your 3rd year, you must take the affirmation oath, committing to a military service upon graduation. She would have to endure 5 years in active duty and another 3 years in the reserves, and we already know how she felt about the military lifestyle, so obviously she was not rocking with that idea. During her sophomore year, she transferred to the University of Massachusetts Amherst to pursue a nursing degree. In her sophomore year, she was dedicated and hardworking, and this seemed like a reasonably paced environment. Maura and Bill were now in a long-distance relationship, and not being man enough to either stay committed or end it, Bill cheated on Maura. Despite the strain of infidelity, distance, and Julie's pressure for Maura to leave Bill, she still wanted to make it work. Now, there isn't any hard evidence, but it is suspected that Bill may have been emotionally and physically abusive to Maura, and I think that could have been a contributing factor as to why she chose to work through the struggles. So we're going to skip ahead a bit, and in November of 2003, just 3 months before her disappearance, Maura was caught and admitted to using a stolen credit card to order food from nearby restaurants. Her charges continued into December and were set to be dismissed after 3 months of good behavior. So, lucky her. Like a slap on the wrist, honestly. Now we jump ahead to February 5th, 2004, mere days before she vanished seemingly into thin air. Maura was on duty at her campus security job and spoke to her older sister Kathleen over the phone. She also spoke to her disgusting piece of shit boyfriend a few times, but fuck him, I don't really care to talk about that. At 10:30, Maura burst into tears, but when her supervisor came over to check on her, Maura was described as just completely zoned out. No reaction at all, she was unresponsive. Around 1:20 a.m., the supervisor escorted Maura back to her dorm. And when questioned about what was wrong, she simply responded with, "My sister." What could her sister and she have possibly discussed that had her absolutely devastated? Well, 14 years later, in October of 2017, we got our answer from Kathleen herself. Kathleen was a heavy alcoholic and had just been discharged from a rehabilitation center just a few hours earlier. On the way home, her fiancé brought her to a liquor store, causing an immediate relapse and unwinding of any progress she may have made. Honestly, I don't know her motivation for going. I don't know why her fiancé would take her to a liquor store. I just don't know anything. There's really nothing on this available, but I think that's very irresponsible, and I don't see why she wasted all her time. You know what? It's none of my business. Let's keep going. A few days later, on Saturday the 7th, Maura's father, Fred, arrived into town to go car shopping and spend time with his daughter, stopping many times on the way at several ATMs. He withdrew $400 each stop, arriving into town with $4,000. You know, why do we even know this? Whose business is it? I guess it is interesting to know, but why are we pocket watching? A little about Maura's car, her piece of shit Saturn. It was down a cylinder and in no condition to drive. You know, that thing probably exploded with the one twist in the ignition. Around 6 p.m., Fred and Maura went to dinner with Maura's friend Kate, and then they went to the liquor store, where Maura purchased a box of wine. Maura dropped Fred off at his hotel and borrowed her dad's brand new Toyota Corolla to attend a party where she stayed most of the night. And the reason for this party is unknown, but I guess you don't need a reason to party, right? But it is weird because no one attending the party has shared any specific details about that night. Maura left the party sometime between 1 to 2 a.m. and around 3 a.m. she totaled her dad's brand new car. And the officers who arrived on the scene let her off without a warning, and she even got a ride from the tow truck driver back to her dad's hotel. There's no information about those officers who arrived on scene, but they are very clearly fucking stupid. Why was she able to just get away with endangering the lives of others? At 5 a.m., Maura called her boyfriend, Bill Roush, on her dad's phone, and after her dad woke up, Maura informed him about the damages to his brand new car, and I'm sure his stomach sank to his ass. I'd definitely be pissed if I were him. Never let anyone borrow your car under any circumstances. And most of his concerns were about the insurance not covering the damages since he wasn't driving. He was relieved to find out that all he would have to pay was the $500 deductible, and yeah, he's good. He has $500 for emergency expenses, I guess. He can afford that. Now we arrive to the day of her disappearance. After midnight on February 9th, Maura stayed up until 4 a.m. looking at rentals in Bartlett, New Hampshire. She also looked up directions to Burlington, Vermont and Bartlett, New Hampshire. Her first contact with anyone that day was 1 p.m. where she emailed her boyfriend, "I love you more, stud. I got your messages, but honestly, I didn't feel like talking to much of anyone. I promise to call today, though. Love, Maura." Now, the timeline here gets a little... Just follow along, okay? Pay attention. At 1:13 p.m., Maura called her classmate Erin O'Neill about returning some borrowed clothes. At 1:30 p.m., Maura emails her professors and supervisor about a death in the family, informing them that she would be away for a few days. Here's the kicker, though. No one in her family died. She made that up. Around 2:05, she called a number for booking hotels in Stowe, Vermont. At 2:18, she called her boyfriend. Maura packed clothing, toiletries, college books, and birth control pills in her car and was on the harsh, snow-covered roads in her barely functioning hunk of junk. Honestly, sounds like she's in for a good time. Toiletries and birth control pills? Let's fucking go. When police searched her room, they discovered most of her belongings packed neatly in boxes, and all of her posters and wall decorations had been removed from the walls. On top of the boxes was an old email printed to Bill. And, you know, I feel like that could possibly indicate some trouble in their already rocky relationship. At 3:15 p.m., Maura withdrew $280 from her account, leaving her with just about $20. And her finances look very similar to me. Familiar. At 3:43, she bought $40 worth of alcohol and also turned in $3.98 worth of cans at 5 cents apiece. And now she was on her way to New Hampshire with no evidence of a specific location in mind. No one knew where or why she was going. You know, maybe she just needed to get away, though. She'd been getting into trouble a lot recently, so I think that's a good theory. She needed to clear her mind, that's it. Just a little road trip. Solo road trip. At 7:27 p.m., Faith Westman, a Woodsville, New Hampshire resident, heard a loud crash. From her window, she saw a car facing the wrong way on Route 112. When she called 911, she initially reported seeing a man smoking in the car. Later, she changed her story, saying it may have just been the glow from a phone. No cigarette butts were ever found, and part of that report is now redacted. Isn't that fucking suspicious? And no one bothered to follow up on that? I don't know. There's something weird going on here, definitely. A local bus driver named Butch Atwood stopped and offered Maura some help. She declined, saying she'd already called AAA, which was suspicious because there was and still is no cell service in that area. Atwood reported the crash at 7:42 p.m. and police arrived minutes later. However, another witness reported seeing a police SUV marked 001 already on scene around 7:33 to 7:46 p.m., just before the official response time. This detail is also missing from the police reports. Officer Cecil noticed red splashes in the snow, but this is another glanced over detail. According to Officer Cecil, Maura's car was locked and they weren't able to enter it. He also claimed that he didn't discover the box of wine until the tow truck had arrived, and this doesn't add up to Trooper Monahan's account. Monahan arrives and asks, "Hey, what's up?" Cecil replies, "I don't know, there's a box of wine in here and it looks like she's been filling a soda bottle with wine." The bus driver who spoke to her earlier mentioned that she didn't seem intoxicated, and many people passing by the scene have also stated that the car doors were wide open. What are you hiding? Upon further inspection, the airbags were deployed and the windshield was cracked from the inside, and despite someone clearly needing medical aid, Cecil turned EMS away as soon as they arrived. That's very questionable, right? And this is another long list of fumbles by the police, just like in the case of the Erickson sisters that I covered in my previous video. You should watch that. Police concluded that she ran off to avoid a DUI, but things get even weirder. The towing company on call, Northland Towing, wasn't contacted. Instead, a guy named Mike Lavoie picked up the car and brought it to his personal garage. That's fucking shady. The Northland owner showed up to express his anger, and meanwhile, the police search for Maura ended around 9:26 p.m., less than 2 hours after the crash. Maura's family wasn't informed until very late the next day, later than one would hope when someone you care about is in trouble. Her dad Fred arrived the next morning and helped lead a search. A tracking dog picked up her scent 100 yards down the road before it disappeared, suggesting that she may have gotten into another car. Bill and his parents arrived that evening, and he was questioned privately, then with his parents, and police suspected that she either ran away or came there to take her own life. Her family strongly disagreed with this. To this day, Maura's case remains unsolved, and her family is still looking for answers more than 2 decades later. Her sister, Julie, continues to bring new eyes to the case with ongoing searches and a podcast that you should totally check out. There was a recent discovery being the development of a fingerprint found in her car from a former cadet at the academy that she went to named Stephen Baldwin. Or Stephen Baldwin, I think that's how you say it. However, until his involvement is proven or disproven, we're just going to end it here, okay? And get into my theories. I'm not a very speculative person or anything, and I usually don't like to talk about things unless they're hard facts, but I managed to cook some stuff up with the old noodle. Let's get into it. Now, theory 1 is about possible police involvement. There are many suspicious, inconsistent details reported and glanced over. For example, the red splashes in the snow. Now, this could have been from the wine she had, but the bus driver said she didn't seem intoxicated, right? So who knows? To build on that, there is also the inconsistency between the stories about not being able to enter the vehicle and Officer Cecil finding the box of wine and the pop bottle. How'd he find that shit if the car was locked, right? Theory 2, I think this one's a little popular, but it's something I thought had some merit, and it's about Maura possibly having a secret passenger. And this goes off of the initial 911 call with the man who was smoking the cigarette. If this perplexing detail is accurate, Maura may have been a hostage. But when Butch got there and spoke to her, there was no person present, right? Aside from her. That new detail with the fingerprint in her car may give this theory some merit, but until we have some answers, let's just put a pin in this one. I think theory 3 is also another pretty common theory, but Maura may have accepted a ride from someone and they ate her. Maybe not. It probably didn't go that far, but they could have killed her or harmed her in some other way. This could be supported by the fact that the search carried out with the dogs on the same day her dad started his own investigation. They used that glove of hers to track the scent, right? And they lost the trail. And that's the conclusion that the police came to, and I think it's not really an impossible theory. Anyway, that's all I have for you today. Thank you for watching. And if you have any evidence on this case at all, or, just any concrete proof of what happened to Maura, give it to me so I can become the hero that this case needs. If anyone in your life starts acting out or is just going through a hard time, be sure to check on them every now and then. It may help or save them in ways that you'd never know. I'd say it's fair to assume that Maura was going through a lot at the time, but we'll probably never know what she had on her mind in those few months leading up to her disappearance. Thank you for watching, and I will see you very soon.